Okay, so this is number 8 in our Absolutely Beginner series for trumpet. So what we're going to do here is learn a little bit about how keys work, how scales work. We're going to extend our range a little bit, and like we often do, we're going to look at it on the instrument a little bit, but we're also going to write everything out because a lot of this is a little bit hard to understand when it's only spoken. It doesn't make as much sense until you kind of get to see it written out a little bit. Okay? So we've already learned a C scale, and if you have any trouble with that, feel free to go back to that video and review. But our C scale went C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and it sounded like this. Now, if you change even one note of that, it'll start to sound really different. Say if I go, so even one note makes a huge difference. So the pattern that those notes have that makes it sound the way it sounds is based off of whether it has a gap between it or it doesn't. Okay, so we've talked about that. Some notes have gaps, like C and D have a gap, but E and F don't have a gap. Okay? Whenever they do have a gap, we call that a whole step. Whenever they don't have a gap, we call that a half step, since it's half the distance. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at our pattern we played for our C scale. So it went C to D, which is a whole step, D to E, which is a whole step, E to F, which is a half step, F to G, which is a whole step, G to A, which is a whole step, A to B, which is a whole step, and B to C, which is only a half step. So it mostly was whole steps. We only had 2 half steps. What's important is where they happened. So if we think of our scale it went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? And those half steps happened at 1, 2, 3, 4, between 3 and 4. 3, 4, 5, 6, oops, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 7, 8. So between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. Okay? So what we're going to do is learn a G scale. So if we start at G, if we want our G scale to work the same as C, we can't just leave our notes plain like we did with C. All of our notes in C are natural, but in G we need to change one to make it fit that pattern. Okay? Now right now I just need you to take my word for it. The note that we're going to need to change is F. We're going to change F to F sharp. Okay? So how you make a note sharp is you raise it up one position from what it would normally be. So since F is normally in our third position, we need to change it to our second position. Okay? So F becomes F sharp. Okay? Sometimes when you look through scales, you'll also find flats. Flats are the opposite. So say if this is E in our 4th position, E flat would be in 5th position. So sharps go up one position, flats go down one position. But for right now, all we need is one note. We just need F sharp. Okay? And we'll explain why we need F sharp when we write all of this out, and then it'll be a lot easier to understand. For right now, let's think about how we would play that. Okay? Well, so if we start at our second G, or not our second G, our only G right now. We don't have 2 Gs just yet. We're heading there in a second. Okay? So our G we have, so we could go G, A, B, C. But then we're out of notes. We don't know any notes past that yet. But we do have enough notes to play a G scale. The thing is, we can go lower. Okay, so say if we start at our low C, well, think about what we know from our high C, right? So we know how to play a B and an A from there. There's our high C. And we can go C, B, A. So if we can do that with our high C, it would only be logical that it would work the same way at our low C. So we can go C, B, A down there. That means all we need is a G. And that's pretty easy to figure out. So if it goes C, B, A, it should be a whole step to G, a skip, right? So not A, G, but a G from our 4th position to our 6th position. So there's our G. Again, if this is confusing, wait until we write it out and it'll make a lot more sense. Okay? For right now, just take my word for it. We're going to go G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So this will be pretty low. This is going to be our G scale going from way down at the bottom. I need to empty out my horn anyway. If your horn gets that gurgly sound, you can always just blow it out here and here. Make sure you push your valves down because sometimes the condensation that's trapped in the horn is in there. It's not spit, it's just condensation, but still, blow it in a sink or a can or handkerchief or something. Don't blow it on your floor, that's gross. Because even if it's not spit, the inside of your horn can get a little bit unpleasant if you don't clean it occasionally. So, so let's look at that scale one more time. So we want to go G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and we'll go back down too. So here's up and down. Back down. And then our arpeggio would be the same construction. We want to play the first note, third note, fifth note, and eighth note. So for this one, it would be G, B, D, G. And again, if that's confusing, when we write it out, it'll be a lot more obvious. Okay? So here's our arpeggio. And then back down. Okay. And if it's hard to get those low notes out, it's okay. They take time to develop. Okay? And you noticed I was even stumbling a little bit there because I'm not super warmed up right now. But all right. So let's look at that all written out. That'll hopefully make a lot more sense. You might want to go back to the beginning of the video and try looking at this part one more time after you've seen it written out, and hopefully that'll really make sense. And now you have two keys you can play in. You can play in this key of C and the key of G, which will be really helpful for learning lots of pieces for beginners. Okay? So after we look at it all written out, we'll take our next step. Let's do that first. All right, so let's really get into the nitty-gritty with this. So we have our C scale. Now, to really understand where our G scale comes from, we have to understand that we're trying to copy the pattern for our C scale. C is the only scale and the only key that has no sharps, no flats, no altered notes. We don't have to push anything in place to make it sound the right way. All the other keys, we have to nudge this note up or nudge this note down to make it sound right, or else it'll sound different. Now, it's not really a matter of right or wrong, they're just different things. And right now we're just trying to understand one pattern that's really common. But just because something doesn't fit this pattern doesn't mean it's wrong, it just means it's not a major scale, it's something else. And it takes time to kind of understand what all those other things are. But let's look at our C scale, right? So it goes whole step, right? It has a gap from C to D. Whole step from D to E. Half step from E to F. Whole step from F to G. Whole step from G to A, whole step from A to B, and half step from B to C. Remember, E and F and B and C are the only notes that are naturally right next to each other. Now, if we use these notes in the gaps, we can create new half steps, but we have to use those notes in the gaps. And we haven't done that at all yet. Okay? So let's work through G. And if you're trying to build a scale, you can do this 100% guaranteed if you ask yourself 3 questions. Those 3 questions are, what is this? What do I want it to be? And then what do I do? Okay? So in the case of G to A, what is it? Well, it's a whole step. Well, what do I want it to be? Well, if I want it to match this pattern, I want it to be a whole step. Well, what do I do? Well, nothing. Well, because I want it to be, it is a whole step. I want it to be a whole step, so I'm good. Okay? Next, A to B. What is it? Well, A to B is a whole step, right? Because the only ones that aren't whole steps are B and C, E and F, right? So it is a whole step. What do I want it to be? Well, if I want it to match this pattern, I want it to be a whole step. So what do I do? Nothing. Okay. How about B to C? What is that? Well, that's a half step, right? Because there's only 2 half steps, B and C and E and F. Well, what do I want it to be? Well, if I want it to match this pattern between 3 and 4, that's a half step as well. So I don't do anything. So far, I haven't had to do anything. I just had to check everything. All right, F to G. So that, or sorry, C to D. What is it? C to D is a whole step. What do I want it to be? If I'm trying to match this, a whole step. So what do I do? Nothing. This might seem pretty boring, but if we were starting on a note besides G, this would be a lot more in depth. It would take a lot more effort. Okay? So Next, we're going to go from D to E. So what is it? It's a whole step. What do I want it to be? A whole step. So what do? Nothing. Okay. Next, after that, E to F, what is it? It's a half step. Well, okay, what do I want it to be? Ooh, if I want it to match this, not a half step. I want it to be a whole step, okay? So what I have to do is push my F away, make it higher. So that's where we get an F sharp, okay? So what a sharp is if you take a note, instead of playing the normal note, you play the note that's in the gap above it, okay? So if we play the note above that, we get an F sharp, okay? Now, this note actually has two names. It could be an F sharp or it could be a G flat. So a flat's a lower version of a note. A sharp is a higher version of a note. In this case, we're calling this F sharp because it makes more sense to go E, F sharp, G than to E, G flat, G. Why have two G's and no F's when we could have one E, one F, and one G? It's just easier to think about, okay? So now that we push that F up, it is a whole step. From here to here, we're skipping one, okay? And then F sharp to G, that's a half step, right? Because they're right next to each other. And what do we want? Well, if we're trying to copy this, we want a half step. So we're done, okay? So for G scale, it just needs to go G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Now the thing is, like I was saying before, we don't have enough notes to play it with what we've done right now, G, A, B, C, D, then we're out of notes. But we can go lower. If we know this C and this C work the same, well, that means this would be a B, this would be an A, and this would be a G. Okay, so now we have enough notes to play. If we play our lowest G, we can go G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. And there's our G scale. If we want to do our arpeggio, treat it just like C. We're going to play 1, 3, 5, and 8. G, B, D, G. Okay, that's all the information you need to do it. If it's a little bit confusing still, I'd recommend going back and watching some of the videos that you've already gone through to make sure everything really makes sense and that you know it internally really well, and then try it again. And with time, it'll get easier and easier. So good luck from there, and we'll see you next time.